Vice President Mike Pence is in charge of the White House's coronavirus task force, and he joins us from here in Washington. Mr. Vice President, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, all.
Mr. Vice President, the first, as Paula mentioned, I want to get to the travel ban to begin with. The first confirmed case of coronavirus in this country was back in January on the 21st. Why have we waited so long for a travel ban?
Well, as you say, when the first case of coronavirus emerged in this country, it would be a little more than a week later that the president took the unprecedented step of suspending all travel from China, which was the originating country of this virus. We also established travel advisories, and we've been screening passengers on all direct flights from South Korea and Italy. But with the epicenter of this epidemic now moving from China and South Korea to Europe, yesterday the president again took the unprecedented step of suspending all travel from Europe for the next 30 days. And that, in combination with our strong mitigation efforts in communities that are experiencing what our experts call community spread, areas of California, Washington State, and New York, we're going to continue to put every effort at home and with regard to these travel restrictions in place to protect the health and safety of the American people.
Mr. Vice President, the president last night said that Europe has dramatically more cases of coronavirus than the United States. However, how do we know that when we have not been testing widely?
Well, every state lab in America is able to conduct tests, and we have 3 particular jurisdictions that we're tracking community spread. We've been flowing testing resources into those areas, and we'll continue to do that. But make no mistake about it, all the new cases in the world this week, 70% of the new cases were in Europe, and the increase has been dramatic. When the president imposed the travel advisory and we began screening all flights, all passengers coming into the United States from Italy 2 weeks ago, there were roughly 500 coronavirus cases. Now there's 12,000, about 1,000 in Germany, about 1,000 in France. That's the reason why the president essentially said, full stop, we're going to suspend all travel, and that American citizens coming home and legal residents will be funneled through 13 different airports. They'll get an initial health screening coming in, but we're also going to ask everyone returning to our country to self-quarantine for 14 days. So testing is happening in every state lab in the country. Many university hospitals have taken the FDA test, like the University of Washington is doing a great job expanding testing capabilities. But the biggest piece on the testing is that our commercial labs that the president brought in last week, companies like Quest and LabCorp, have already had approved a new test that they, several days ago, have begun to take to market, which they can do in a vast and expansive way across the country. And literally in the days ahead, we're going to continue to see the availability of tests at your local doctor, ultimately at your local pharmacy, continue to expand.
Mr. Vice President, the governor of New York, who is, of course, dealing with a significant outbreak of cases, said that there are 2 ways to reduce this: massive quarantines, massive testing. And he said we can't rely on the CDC or the FDA, that they've become a bottleneck and testing is taking too long.
Well, I spoke with Governor Cuomo last night in connection with some guidance that CDC just issued to New York and Washington State and California. We put out very, very strong recommendations for social distancing, for large gatherings, for schools, and we're working in very close cooperation with the state of New York. And the governor and I also have talked about the fact that we are working for the high volume testing to be approved. The state lab in New York State is already able to do that. As the governor and I discussed earlier this week, we're working to expand that to other state labs. And the American people can be confident we are going to continue to work in every way to clear out, as the president said, any red tape, any barriers to testing that might have existed at the FDA, and make it possible for state labs, university hospitals, as well as these commercial laboratories. I can't emphasize enough, if you go to the website for the companies Quest or LabCorp, you can already see they're providing resources, information, where healthcare providers can obtain tests, and that'll be literally expanding by the day.
Mr. Vice President, that's heartening news for many people, I'm sure. But just to put this all in context, China at this point had about 300,000 tests out there. South Korea, 200,000 tests. We have, on the official count, 7,700. So why are we so far behind? Should we have begun this testing earlier? Because if you don't test, you don't catch the milder cases, you can never contain this thing.
Well, I think it is an issue since I was tapped to lead this effort 2 weeks ago by the President here at the White House that we've put real focus on. And the fact is that every state laboratory in the country now, for some time since the advent of the coronavirus in this country, has been able to conduct their own coronavirus tests. But the truth is, they are not required to report that testing to the CDC, as you have to do in the case of many diseases. And so it's a voluntary reporting right now. We're working to adjust that so that we're getting the full information from every state lab. But any one of your viewers this morning that might be concerned that they were exposed to the coronavirus or to someone who had it, or if they have symptoms, they can call their doctor. Their doctor can contact their state lab, and they'll be able to find out how they can obtain a test. In all 50 states, tests are being conducted. And as I said, at the President's direction, we're working to expand that very broadly all across the country in cooperation with our incredible commercial laboratories.
And the President has said that every American who wants to get tested can get tested, but that's simply not true. From what we're hearing from our own medical contributors, health officials from New Jersey told Congress on Tuesday that the state of about 9 million people has only received 2 test kits. So when will the states get these kits?
Well, I think what the President was referring to there was something that Governor Jay Inslee of Washington State called to our attention about 2 weeks ago, and that was that many health professionals interpreted CDC guidance to say that if you were only mildly symptomatic, that a doctor would not have the authority to recommend a coronavirus test. We changed that. CDC sent out very clear guidelines so that now if you call your doctor, regardless of your symptoms, a doctor can order without hesitation a test. They can contact the state laboratory. And as I said, we're continuing to expand the availability. And literally, we're literally going to expand to hundreds of thousands of more tests in the days and weeks ahead all across the country. But the President's focus last night was to say we need to suspend all travel from Europe because we do know now that the epicenter of the coronavirus is Europe, and that when we looked over the last 36 hours, of the 35 states yesterday, early in the day, that had coronavirus cases, 30 of those actually could be tied to contacts with Europe. So the President said full stop and on any travel incoming from Europe. Mr. Vice President. But we're also marrying that to all of our mitigation efforts, particularly in the communities where we have community spread. But make no mistake about it, every American can help by practicing common sense and good hygiene, regardless of whether there's a coronavirus case in your community.
Absolutely correct. That's a good note to end on. We've got to leave it there. Vice President Pence, thank you very much. We hope to talk to you again real soon.